And now, without further ado, I would like to say that today we are incredibly honored to welcome Congresswoman April McClain Delaney. The Congresswoman was elected in 2024 to represent Maryland's 6th Congressional District. So within Montgomery County, her district includes portions of Gaithersburg and Montgomery Village, as well as Germantown, Clarksburg, Damascus, Poolesville, and a large part of the Ag Reserve. She serves on the House Ag Committee as well as the Science, Space, and Technology Committee. Congressman, we sincerely thank you for taking the time
Oh,
to speak with us today. We're just so happy to have you here.
so thank you. Well, first of all, Alice and Elizabeth, thank you all. And Montgomery County Food Council is an unbelievable resource, I think, for our county. And I think it's what, over 2,000 different kind of partners that you interface with in terms of food resilience and making sure people don't go hungry. And I think it's an unbelievable mission and one that I really, my whole congressional office, both in the district and on the Hill, want to wholeheartedly help and start a dialogue. It's a hard time right now. As you know, I was just saying to Allison before you all got on, is that I just have spent the past 2.5 days in the 6th congressional district because it also includes Frederick, Allegheny, Washington, and Garrett. So I went all the way from Montgomery County events to all the way to Deep Creek Lake and back. Met with a lot of our farm bureaus, our nonprofits, our regional hospitals that are really worried about Medicaid, and also talk about food as well. But with respect to Montgomery County, I think that you are blessed in so many ways with so many different partners and actually a lot of unbelievable abilities to strategize and to cross collaborate, which is what I love about you all. But just wanted to kind of lift up and give you a little bit of background about what's happening on the Hill and what I've been doing. And then, moving forward, just love to hear a few questions if you want, if that makes sense. So a couple of things. I do serve on the Ag Committee. I am the one Marylander who kind of represents all of Maryland, but I've been especially focused on the 6th district. I fought traditionally the Farm Bill has not been reauthorized since 2018. And it was something I was very looking forward to, that it has historically been a very bipartisan committee because you had your SNAP versus, your Farm Bill of conservation and crop insurance and traditional components of the Farm Bill. I along with many of my Democratic colleagues, were very upset and pushed back against all of the cuts to SNAP. Across my district, 1 in 9 families depend on SNAP, and as you know, half of them are children. And many of the, almost $180 billion has been cut from SNAP funding. And I think the hardest part for me is that it starts at the federal level and is, of course, foisting about $75 million of that upon the state. And if it was just SNAP or just Medicaid, but it's the tsunami of cuts that I keep talking about that are collectively, it's just too much for any state to handle. And so then it triages, of course, down to the counties and then the municipal levels. And you're starting to see it already. This morning, I got Catholic Charities, an email. I've long been involved with Catholic Charities almost for 20 years, begging for more resources in the DC capital and Maryland region because of, as you know, the impact on the food pantries and hunger. What I have been trying to do is, we are fighting for, of course, Medicaid issues, fighting back against, all of the agency cuts that are happening, the 35,000 government employees that I have at, NIST and NIH and our parts of our Institute on Cancer and our Fire Academy. But with all of these different cuts, I've decided that I have to meet on a county by county basis with different stakeholders and try to figure out what are going to be the true impacts of those cuts and how can we cross collaborate. And I can think of no better partner to try and help you all in terms of shining a bright light even though I am not a state or a local leader, in my federal position, I think I can shine a bright light and help on a local level, because on a national level, until we fight back against, many of these cuts, I'm trying to stem some of the issues that are that are going to happen. On a larger level, there is, it's a head spinning time, but, I'm happy to take a host of questions on what is happening. But with this big, beautiful bill, which is not so beautiful, I think that the key part is illuminating that these, how these cuts are going to impact the local level, counties, and what we can do in real time. Um, I will be doing a series of different town halls also across the district, including one tonight I'm having in Frederick with Senator Alsobrooks. And, of course, anyone throughout the 6th is welcome to come to that. But happy to take any questions briefly, because I know that you all probably want to know more specific things as well.
Thank you so much for your remarks. Yeah, we asked three of our food council members today to come join us. They represent different sectors of the food system, and to ask, specific questions about the impact of these federal
Sure.
policies. I just want to do a quick plug for our food council. We do have a 25-member voluntary food council. These are three of those members. We are in recruitment season right now for our 2026 class of council members. If you are interested in joining our efforts, Bita will put a link in the chat on how you can join. So first, I'd like to introduce Lori Savage. Lori and her family operate Brown Cow Creamery in Mount Airy, one of 2 dairy farms left in Montgomery County. And she is also the operations director for Future Harvest, a farmer education nonprofit. So Lori, over to you to ask your question.
Good afternoon, April and everyone. We know that cutting USDA funding and staff has real-world impacts. For example, our farm qualified for 2024 drought emergency payments, which have been extremely helpful in paying for inputs from last year, but we have not received the full amount for which we qualified. Also, we were fortunate to receive the USDA Resilient Food Infrastructure Grant, but it took so long to process that funding that 2 of our partners have actually gone out of business since we applied. With USDA cutting even more staff and funding, even right here at the Beltsville Research Center, this is only going to make matters worse. Farmers depend on the research and programming from USDA, especially small and mid-sized farms that are on the forefront of innovation. When USDA doesn't run like it should, farmers can't grow food for the public. How can we keep USDA functioning in this current climate?
Oh, that is such an excellent question, and one I'm really, really focused on. Secretary Rollins actually spoke to the Ag Committee a couple of about 2 months ago, and she highlighted that there might be a restructuring of USDA, and of course there is. They are, as you know, taking almost 2,200 USDA workers and staff, and putting and kind of spreading them across the country, which is very unsettling, as well as you mentioned, the Greenbelt facility in terms of research, which is being undermined, and it's a travesty what they're doing. I have led a letter, with several of our colleagues in the across the state of Maryland. One speaking to the fact that the Greenbelt research facility, there's decades of research professionals and expertise that could be at risk of being lost. And I have also reached out to the secretary for a personal meeting to talk about research and how important it is for our farmers. Yesterday, I met with the Frederick Farm Bureau. Excuse me, the Allegheny Farm Bureau, and they were particularly concerned about the screwworm and certain ticks and the health of our cattle in Maryland, but across the country. And this is something I think that is increasingly getting a lot of visibility from the administration. But what can we do? I think the key part is that our farmers and our farm bureaus really have to stand up and talk about the value of research and how important it is, because this administration does listen to farmers. We are really leading a fight against some of the reorganization efforts. And I spoke on, a couple of podcasts that were, are targeting a lot of the agro businesses and farmers about the value of USDA and their expertise. And the last thing I think that we are really kind of uplifting is, speaking to how in this reorganization there could be more harm than good. They're so hastily trying to do these restructurings and these cuts. But there is now kind of a bigger pushback within the ag industry writ large. And so I think there is going to be some ability to relook at some of those grants that have been cut back. But in the short term, if you want, my office is more than happy to, I would say, reach out to my office. I know this, my staff is online, and we are happy to make some additional calls and forward these specific requests. But in a general sense, I think USDA and the reorg efforts are resulting in a lot of chaos right now. And can you hear me on the audio? I hear a little bit of an echo.
Yes, we can hear you just fine. Thank you.
But I think these are really, really important points. And there is across, I think, Steny Hoyer, Westmore. I mean, there's a lot of people who are starting to take note. I will be doing an ag roundtable across the 6th district, and also there is a Farm Bureau and ag table that the governor is doing. I know next week. I think on September 5th. In Timonium at the Maryland Fairgrounds, and the new executive director for the FSA of Maryland is going to be there. So I think raising those issues in that forum as well would be very helpful.
Thank you so much for your response.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Lori, for your question. Switching gears a little bit to food security, I'd like to introduce Marco Rivera Oven. Marco is the Director of Operations for the Up County Hub, which was the first service hub created during the COVID-19 pandemic. Marco leads all programs, initiatives, and services for the organization, which currently serves over 1,500 families weekly. Marco, go ahead and ask your question.
Thank you. First of all, thank you, Congresswoman Delaney. We're among friends here, so I'm happy to be honored to ask a question. And I know we run in various circles, and I appreciate all the work that you've done for the system.
And you guys do so much in Germantown, and your community leaders and volunteers who stretch every resource to keep people fed is amazing. So kudos to you all.
Thank you. And just thank you for being part of Team Maryland and everything that you're doing in DC, and a huge shout out very quickly to your staff, who's always willing and amazing and extremely responsive. If not everybody knows, but I've had the privilege to work with a lot of them, and they're always extremely responsive and receptive. So I appreciate.
Oh, thank you. I'm really blessed by a great staff, Sunny Holding and all the way down. They're amazing. So thank you. I did just see in the chat, and I'm just going to say quickly, it's September 5th for the governor's roundtable, which is going to be at Timonium. And I think our staff can put it in the chat. My roundtable was going to be around the same time, and I'm going to have it later in September, probably the 3rd week in September. That date has not been yet set, but I will be doing one across the 6th, the 3rd week in September. So I will make sure you all know when that is. Keep on going.
Yeah, no problem. So yeah, my question covers more so on food recovery, specifically in your district, or just in general, with the relaunch of the bipartisan Congressional Food Recovery Caucus, which is aiming to reduce food waste and redirect any surplus food to residents in need. My specific question was any specific actions that you will support or propose to strengthen any food recovery efforts in your district?
Well, it's really interesting you say that, because I was just in gosh, I had 15 events over the last 2 days, which is why I'm losing my voice. But I think it was in Allegheny County. And I had spoke to the local elected leaders in Allegheny County at Mako, and then again. And, they, just like I was talking about, dealing with on a county by county basis, talking about food recovery efforts, they were saying, a lot of our nonprofits need to better coordinate with one another and say, perhaps we can't do it all, but what can we specialize in? And then how can we cross leverage with different, private entities? And they were saying, hey, we know that there's a big Amazon food distribution center and they throw out food. Maybe we need to approach them. I think a lot of, with this caucus, which I want to, join on a federal level. I think it would be very interesting if we could figure out ways for there to be greater tax advantages and tax credits for those that are contributing in the private sector. And I know that there's been a lot of discussion on ways to incentivize the private sector to step in and due to this. But I would love to hear some of your input as well, because on a federal level, I think it is, really important that we support our local, because I've already voted against these SNAP cuts. I'm advocating and I'm pushing back to make sure that we are able to reinstate this funding and to reinstate, more of these, project grants through and through USDA funding, but figuring out ways that we can help, as a federal elected official, I cannot, of course, ask specific, companies to do things. But what I can do is really highlight the issue. But I would love to hear from you all if there are specific things on a federal level we can do, and how we can better cross collaborate with the private sector, because that is really the way that we are going to stem and meet the need. And I'm sitting in I have to say this, I'm here in an official capacity. So I represent Republican, Democrat, Independent, anyone within my district. But these cuts are going to hurt everyone, no matter what your zip code or what your circumstance. And so I think it's really important that, we highlight the specific needs. And the one thing that you all have, your this amazing coalition, this food council, is that you have the data and the unbelievable ability to understand exactly where that need is, and helping those of us in elected office understand that need specifically will help us do our jobs better.
Wonderful. Thank you for that,
And
Anne.
and if you have specific suggestions, any of you, I would love you, to reach out to Sunny or Sanjay, who is on this call, or put them in the chat.
Great. Thank you, Marco, for that question.
Yeah, no, thank you. I'll definitely follow up, and Congresswoman, it's always good to see you. I appreciate it. The only two things, we're very lucky to be in Montgomery County. The only two things that I'll say, Allison, if that's okay, I'm not trying to ramble or toot my own horn, but I think Community Food Rescue is an amazing program that is run by Man of Food Center. And I also see Heather on here from OFSR, which is one of the new county offices, which also rolls out an immense amount of grants to support smaller organizations to do amazing work, to also do food rescue. So I appreciate everything that you're doing in DC, and also just to support organizations like ours. Thank you.
Information is really important. And, big hearts to both Man of Food, Up County Hub, so many of you online. But, that for me, it's the on the ground data and figuring out exactly where the need is that's going to help me help you all best. So if we can keep that collaboration going, it would be really fantastic.
I see a hand raised from Montgomery Council Member Sales. Go ahead.
Hi, Lorianne. Good to see you.
Hello, Congresswoman Delaney. How are you
Really?
doing? I am so glad we are speaking about this big, ugly bill, and had a few questions to ask you just regarding the SNAP benefits and the new work requirement. Are there any waivers that you are aware of, and how are we notifying recipients across the state about the work requirements, the timeline for the accountability, to find out if there is, a slow roll off, or what is the timeline for this taking effect, and what, if any, waivers are available?
Well, as you know, 17 million people nationwide will lose benefits,
Yeah.
and parents with children 13 will lose support unless they meet these burdensome work and paperwork requirements. The problem is that all of these able-bodied people they talk about, many of them do work, as you
Mm.
know, or have other issues why they cannot work. And the saddest part is, whatever the case, children should never go hungry. And I
Yeah.
cannot believe that 13, you're considered an adult.
Yeah.
Having said that, the waiver requirements, if you look at the language, I mean, there is not a lot of leeway. My Republican colleagues say that this is only for those who are not meeting, who are undeserving, whatever that means. But there are not a lot of waiver requirements per se, but it is really a matter of these burdensome paper requirements. And I think the best way that we can help our constituents is
Mhm.
to put forth, and I'm going to work with my staff on this, you know, um, a simple summary of what
Yeah,
is coming
like a one
and
page.
then what they have to fill out. Because,
Yeah.
often it is the same thing that just has to be filled out every single time. And if we could give some clear guidelines
Yeah.
based, and almost a sample form of what that means so that they can come into compliance, because they're trying to make it very difficult to keep,
Yeah.
and what is, volunteering work, what is part-time work.
Mhm.
And the hard part, and I'm doing some research on it, is that some of these requirements, interestingly enough, it's that you could be working 20 hours a week, but sometimes you're not making enough of the wage. And so
Okay.
then you're still not, qualifying. And I do think that if you are working the number of hours, but not making that minimum wage part, you might be able to qualify for this waiver.
Yeah. Okay.
And so what I would like to do is, work with, my team, work with some of you all and try to figure out if there's a way that we can have a simplified version. And I would love to use this across all my counties of what it is, what
Yes.
you need to file, and
Mhm.
then kind of some sample, how you do this in the process and how you submit it. Um, uh, and my office, I'm going to try and task someone to become the
Okay.
expert person that is the point person for
Yeah.
just this issue. But I think that there should be a point person, probably, for you all at the different places at once we get that together, because I think that would be very helpful. It's not just the waiver, it's also, I think the qualify. It's most
Definitely.
importantly, many people can qualify if they're able to jump through the hoops. And how can we make that as streamlined if possible, if that makes sense?
Yes. And then is there a timeline for when these are going to go into effect? Because with school starting this week, it's usually at back to school night, the students start filling out their forms for the free and reduced meals. And parents are already concerned about the impact and students going hungry at school, because of this act. And so we reached out to OFSR to get more information, but there really is not a lot of guidance on when the trigger is going to take place and, just so we can prepare our parents and families.
Well, I think a lot of the trigger is going to be in 2026. If you think
Mhm.
about it, the SNAP payment error rates, which is what, there's all of this data about cost sharing and how much the different states, because what they're trying to do is push much of this. Oh, we didn't cut SNAP. We're just like, pushing it to the states, right?
Yeah.
And how much the states, what percentage will depend upon, there's certain states that will get waivers. You're right. I mean, not individuals, but states will get certain waivers. Ironically, if they have very high error rates in terms of how they have computed some of the SNAP benefits in the past. The reason why is actually we were in the middle of that, error rate, percentage on a national basis, but many of the Republican states were the worst. And so they were actually trying to help the Republican states get those waivers more. So it almost incentivized people, incentivized states to be less efficient and effective. It's such an irony. But most of that data sharing and that I think is going to start into 26 and 27.
Okay. Okay.
But you'll start, I think 25, we are kind of where we are, but it's
Okay.
into
Okay.
26. But I'll get back to you with specific details because we are trying to figure that out as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And I have another question, but if there are
Sure.
others who have a
Yeah,
question.
if you want to say it quickly, and I will
Yes,
answer
thank
quickly.
you. Thank you.
But I will get back to you with a more specific exactly, because we are trying to figure that out as well. And part of that, I think, is going to be based on some of the administrative agencies and USDA and others that are weighing in.
Sounds good. Thank you so much. So my other question is about the 66 billion that's going to be allocated to farmers over the next decade, mostly for crop insurance and commodity programs. But we know that our resources, $12 million is spent on working with farmers to produce table-ready crops. How are we ensuring that this money will be equitably disseminated across all farm producers? I know that's a bad word at the federal level right now. Just wanted to better understand how we are ensuring this money is being spread across our farmers, our urban farmers, and especially those who are, producing the food crops.
Great question. How do we, well, lifting up, how do we make sure with this administration that any of
Gosh.
these funds are equitably and fairly distributed? Don't start to talk to me about FEMA and how we
Oh,
are dealing with, those allocations in Allegheny and Garrett counties.
mm,
I think that it is really a matter of getting in there and lobbying and really advocating for certain of these benefits and speaking frankly. I do think that they are talking about a skinny farm bill. I'm not sure if you're aware
mm,
of this, but
no.
JT Thompson, who is chair, and I actually have a pretty good relationship with him because I'm a farmer's daughter. I talk farming and I
Mm,
understand it because, my dad was a potato farmer and I know about crop insurance, the commodities and what have you. What they did is they regulated in the big bad bill, the SNAP portion. So they feel like they have dealt with that, which was usually how the farm bill came together. So they peeled that away, and then they peeled away commodities, and they really worked on a digital assets crypto bill. And so you heard all of this about crypto, but a lot of
mm,
that when they had the Clarity Act. And it is really deals with the commodities portion as well as cryptocurrency, and that ironically, crypto is under a joint, is jointly overseen by both financial services and by the ag, because the commodities portion is under ag. So those two have been stripped away. So the skinny farm bill is going to actually be debated along with what you said specifically, many of these different funding and loan programs. And that'll be conservation, rural development, crop insurance, a farm safety net. And right now, every congressional office who's on ag has been tasked to put forth 4 or 5 of their key priorities. I put forth, rural development, USDA funding for emergencies, some of our farmers, and really speaking to, a lot of the issues of access to capital. but I
Yeah.
could still add some priorities. So if you have specific things you'd like me to prioritize to put into this farm bill, because I think the question you raise is actually all going to be rejiggered in the next couple of months as we look at this skinny farm bill, wherever that shakes out, and maybe even putting forth some sort of language that speaks to, equality of access of capital, of loans, of development, might be even, put into that language of the bill.
Yeah, specifically targeting the farmers doing table crops are the priority, and those are usually our smaller farmers. So, without even using the word equitably, we are focused mostly on the farm to table fruit crops and
Exactly. I think that's amazing. I agree with that. And the sad part that I have been trying to raise is particularly for, our farm to table crops, some of our farmers markets, even if you look at, Lucas orchards or even Butler orchards, for every dollar that was put into SNAP, $1.50 came back into our economy,
I
including
don't understand.
farmers that sold into SNAP in our groceries, and these farm to table crops, which some of them, obviously went into the school lunch programs. But yeah, I will. Why don't we have an offline discussion, or if anyone else wants to
Definitely.
give me some of these
Yeah,
priorities, I'm happy to raise them.
awesome. Thank you so much.
Yep.
And
I'm
and
happy to take one more question, but I don't want to take up your whole, if you have other things you want to discuss, but I'm happy to take any more questions.
yeah,
There's so much to say on food security, but also on a national level, there's so much that is, I have to say, in flux. And I think that is, my big line is not make America great, but make America break. And I think they're really trying to break a lot of these systems, the trust, the functionality of a lot of these agencies, and also and doing it with at a dizzying speed. And the important thing is that we do a workaround and that we don't break. We don't allow, that hunger and that and some of these functioning programs that have worked so well to be undermined.
yeah, absolutely. And I just want to thank Councilmember Sales for your questions and for being here today. When it comes to SNAP, I want to point out Heather Bruskin, Director of OFSRs, have put some resources in the chat with some timelines. We have a really great SNAP outreach community here in Montgomery County. We host a monthly SNAP work group. If anyone's looking for resources, particularly around the work requirements, we've gone into that in extensive detail in those meetings, probably more than anyone wants to hear, but happy to provide those resources. And while we're talking about SNAP, our last question is actually on SNAP. So I want to introduce Monica Rivera Goldberg. Monica is the program manager with the Montgomery County Community Action Agency with DHHS, where she leads the navigation unit and test center teams that connect families to critical resources such as food, housing, and case management. So Monica,
Amazing.
go ahead.
Thank you so much for
Great work,
having
Monica.
me. And thank you so much for taking the time today. So to add a little bit of context to the question, I'm here at our walk-in center, test center in the Long Branch area. And today we had 2 people come in and want to close their SNAP accounts, and 1 person come in wanting to pull their child out of school. And so my question is, what safeguards, if any, are in place to protect data of SNAP recipients for sharing with outside organizations such as ICE or DOGE? And how can data sharing be leveraged to better identify, oops, sorry, timed lights over here. And how can data sharing be leveraged to better identify eligible but unenrolled households, especially immigrant or mixed status families who may not apply due to fear or confusion? Just something we're all battling right now.
Oh my God, such an amazing question. And one, my background was for 15 years. I worked at the nonprofit Common Sense Media, and privacy of information, not only for children but for all of us, has been top notch. I've worked on comprehensive privacy and data legislation for since 2007. So you were exactly right. I mean, I'm sure you saw today in the paper about how DOGE had taken almost 300 million people's Social Security information, and that there were no protections or safeguards on it, and that in fact they don't even know exactly who had access to it. This is something that I have been fighting and have led several letters on, and in fact am in the process. I'm on two bills with Sam Liccardo, who is actually out of the Bay Area and does a lot with the tech industry, but I'm in the process of actually submitting a bill that would prohibit this cross sharing across agencies of data. Many of it is much of it is protected by other pieces of legislation, including HIPAA for healthcare data. And that there, for those that access it and use it for other types of out of mission functions, that there would be liability, civil liability for commercial use, but also potentially other sanctions as well. It's terrible. I think it's really hard because ICE is lawless. It is, as you know, they're taking people off the streets, often those who are legally here. The hard part, I think, right now is that they are meant to create fear, and that they are sharing that data across streams. And I think that we will know in the next 2 or 3 weeks, depending on a couple of court cases, if they're going to be allowed to continue to use that data for immigration purposes. Even if there is such a ruling, I'm not quite so sure that this administration will comply. It is a terrible situation to be in right now. How do you ensure that those who need it most and who potentially are not here in the way, that is a very tricky question. I would encourage, probably what is going to happen is that many of those that are maybe here legally or might be under asylum have different ways that they are here, including their children, that they will probably start accessing more our nonprofits, our food pantries, Upcounty Hub, places where that there is, that you do not need to submit for SNAP. But in the short term, the sad but true issue is, as we fight it through the courts and as we push back legislatively and otherwise, it is really hard to not to say that information will be protected if they enroll in SNAP or other government programs. It is, I think, lawless. I think, Congressman Raskin and I have had several conversations on it, but I think that is where you all are going to have to come in terms of on the nonprofit side and in the non-SNAP arena. If there is not a legal status, I think it could be compromised. And I'm sure, and I would love to see if you're hearing that it is being compromised, because I would love to highlight if in certain cases on a no names basis, those situations, because that would be helpful for me in making my case and how really horrific it is.
Thank you.
Probably not the answer you wanted to hear, but we are trying to fight it in the courts, and obviously I'm trying to fight it legislatively. But on the ground, I think it's going to mean that you'll have to probably presume the worst. The only thing that we could do potentially is on a state level with, working more in conjunction with our state legislature and with the governor. And it's something I aim to raise with him in our next meeting.
Thank you. Thank you, Monica, for your question. We have about 15 minutes left, and so I wanted to open it up to Q&A from the rest of our participants today. And see, we have a question right away. So AK, go ahead.
Hi, Representative Delaney. It's nice to meet you. I'm AK. I'm here with Mana Food Center. Thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. You guys do great work.
Thank you. I have one point that I just wanted to raise to you just as a concern, and then I have a question. The point I wanted to raise is around this aspect of protecting all of our residents, regardless of who has papers and who doesn't. I understand that we are still awaiting real guidance on what data sharing is going to be expected. I wanted to request that in conversations with the secretary, if it's possible to negotiate that we at least don't share past state data, that I think would be really, really helpful.
So tell me that. I would love to raise that to Secretary Rollins or her staff. How do you define past state data?
So any data before the applications, new applications going in this year. So including recertifications, if that relates to someone who's applied in a previous year, that should be protected. My obviously there's the impact on those households, but I also want to raise that it's an impact on people doing this work. If they know that they have endangered someone who they were trying to help, it is a huge emotional burden. So just want to note that as well. The question
It's a very good point.
the question I have for you is, are you hearing from your colleagues in other states about any innovative ways that nonprofits are, rising up to this occasion and finding new ways to remain resilient? I would love to hear any examples that you might have heard of that we can learn from.
It's interesting. I think it's something that we're all struggling with. The only thing I have heard is, as I'm trying to, have these convenings of different counties to talk about the needs and how to become more, more collaborative. I will say that in Michigan, I know I've talked to Debbie Dingle about this, and also, Kristen McDonald Rivet as well, who are big SNAP proponents and have worked for years on hunger. I think that there is two things. One, many nonprofits have been very, very dependent on state and county and government grants, and I think that there is a growing realization that they're going to have to do more private fundraising. I hate to say that, but also that in that cross collaboration, typically there is not. I mean, I think Montgomery County is a little bit different, but there has not been as much dialogue across nonprofits, and perhaps saying some nonprofits, might say, this might be more my scope right now, narrowing their scope and their expertise, and trying to figure out if an example given to me is sometimes in certain counties, there's multiple nonprofits who are doing who are feeding the homeless at different times, and figuring out ways to work to how they are feeding different segments of the population, and how they can work with for-profit for donations. That's all I've heard. Unfortunately, I think we're all kind of scrambling at this point. But I will keep my ear to the ground, and I will raise it at our next ag meeting, because those of us on ag are the most most focused on issues of hunger.
Thank you so much.
And if you have any helpful suggestions, obviously as well, but I will raise it. I just know that it was greater collaboration and working with our private sector is all I've been hearing about thus far.
Thank you, and thanks for that question, AK. Any other questions for the Congresswoman? I see that there is a question in the chat, actually, so I'll go ahead and read that out loud from Michelle Rogers. What steps is the Senate taking to expand access to programs that treat food as medicine, such as medically tailored meals and produce prescription programs, to help reduce diet-related chronic diseases and healthcare costs?
So what is the Senate? I'm sorry, say that again. What has the Senate done?
Yeah, I think she's just asking what is being done in Congress to work toward this.
Do you know what? I think that a lot, with the whole Make America Healthy Again strategy, which I'm not quite so sure is making America healthy or better. But there is a growing recognition, I think, actually on both sides of the aisle, that food is medicine, that food keeps us healthy. And, you know, this is between several different, NIH, who is, part of it's in my district, has been doing a lot of work on this as well. And the research that's affiliated with it, whether it be USDA or direct grants is so important to further a lot of these issues. It has been done. There are a couple of working groups that are looking at this under SST, the Science, Space, and Technology Committee on the House side. I don't know as much on the Senate side. I would love to reach out to Senator Van Halen and Osselbrooks on that and could get back to you. The one thing I will say that is really incredible is Meritus Health in Hagerstown is an incredible health institution. And the man who ran it is really very focused, who runs it is very focused on rural healthcare, access, affordability, and just started, I must say, a medical school. The first one in 130 years in Hagerstown they just enrolled 95 medical students, and they're hoping that those doctors stay in Maryland, throughout Maryland, including the 6th district, but particularly our up counties. But interestingly enough, he said that they are writing food prescriptions. He said, part of preventative health is actually good food. And so they're looking at, diabetes, they're looking at chronic blood pressure, and they're actually working with local nonprofits and with food banks, and they're writing prescriptions for food and what they should be eating. And I said, I would love to have more information on that. And they said, we would be happy to send it to you. Because I think what an incredible thing that doctors are becoming much more cognizant, and actually whole health organizations and hospitals are saying, maybe if we help do more preventative in terms of the foods that we eat and the health protocols that we have, that we're going to be helping kids develop cognitively, emotionally, and socially in a healthy way when they're growing, but also as we age, how can we prevent a lot of these food, health issues. So I would love to do some more work on that and see if we could further more of that type of research, but also, how we could support that on a federal and state level. But happy to send you that information because I thought it was really innovative. Meritus is doing a lot of really great work in the food arena, in addition to, just accessibility of healthcare.
Absolutely. And I see Lori pointed out in the chat that our local Office of Food Systems Resilience also has awarded grant programs around food as medicine.
Isn't that great? I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
And also the Boys and Girls Club of Hagerstown just opened a brand new facility about a month and a half ago. Fantastic. And I'd love to bring, upgrade some of our Montgomery County, Boys and Girls Clubs and other similar type entities, but they are working with USDA funding, but also with the local food banks there to make sure that they give a full meal to these kids. And I'm sure that many of you are doing that after school as well, because it's so important how we cross leverage so that they develop in a healthy manner, and they're not sent home hungry.
Absolutely. Yeah, Lorian, go ahead.
Yeah, Lorian McCauley with Montgomery County Food Council. Thank you so much, Congresswoman, for taking the time to be with us. I had a question that's been of concern to our stakeholders, a different question about the mass deportations. And, we know based on USDA ERS data that 10% of our labor force in the United States is farmers and food system workers. And I have not heard people talking nearly enough about the fact that the mass deportations are affecting our labor force. Labor consistently ranks as number 1 and number 2 concerns for farmers. And we have been sort of looking for any economic analyses or anything. It'd be great if there were some sort of USDA ERS analysis of how this is going to affect local communities and especially the farm labor workforce in the mass deportations. And I'm just wondering if you had heard anything or if you are
I have.
considering that kind of analysis.
Really interesting. All my 5 farm bureaus brought up immigration and farmers. I was with a farmer yesterday in what county was I in? In Allegheny. And I was feeding corn with him to the cows. But he brought up this issue as well, across the 6th. But even in Montgomery County with our orchards in particular, you talk to Butler's Orchard or you talk to many of our orchards, they really need the labor that is coming, a lot from Central America and Mexico, because they are trained workers on how to, to pick at these orchards. And yeah, it's a huge issue across this country in terms of the ability of particularly these seasonal workers who, my dad, was a potato farmer, and we would, the same men came from a place in Mexico every year for 15 years, and they would come up in, April, May, and go back in October. And so 2 things. One, I've been putting forth actually within ag, and Secretary Rollins is really concerned about this issue, putting forth a streamlined process, particularly for those who come back every single year, so that it's very, there's a lot more requirements and it's a lot more expensive to bring in seasonal workers. And so figuring out a way to streamline those fees, but also if once they've come in for one season, that they can have kind of a streamlined, almost automatic entry for future years. And I think that will help a lot in terms of helping some of our ag companies, have the work they need. And it is true that many of these skills are very specialized and that we don't have them in our local workforce. And if you try and train, high schoolers and what have you, that it is or many people, that it is a difficult thing to do. So it is definitely, I think, something that we are looking at within the state of Maryland, both on a state and federal basis, but also I think, at a national level, there is an emphasis on streamlining that process. But it is a huge problem for our farmers, and it's very costly. And a lot of I've heard from all of the farm bureaus that it is a costly process as well. Next week, I'm hopeful to meet the FSA, the new Farm Service Agency, the new Maryland appointee, and also talk with him about these issues. So happy to update you further after I get some insights from him.
Thank you for that. I know we're nearing the end of our time. I was just hoping in the couple minutes remaining that, this is our advocacy call. All of us on the call are advocates. I think almost everyone wrote letters, made phone calls, did whatever they could to try to stop, what wound up happening in HR1. What would you say to us in this moment where we could most effectively put our advocacy efforts to have an impact?
I think the biggest way, all of us, everyone says, April, why can't you do more? Why can't we all do more? We're taking the votes, we're standing, we're fighting, we're dealing with the courts, we're all, lockstep. I think the best way that you all as advocates, I still think, is to connect the dots with data, with personal stories, and to uplift them across your neighbors, across, your, with everyone, Montgomery County is pretty, I will say it is pretty simpatico on most of these issues, across the whole county. But I think really connecting those dots, we are here in a national forum as well, and being able all of you to get on the radio, to get on social media. I would love to do more targeted media because, my colleagues across the aisle are very good at, direct to phone, targeted media to phone. And I think within the, Montgomery County, I think really connecting the dots of what these cuts really mean, because I am seeing as I'm traveling, in my microcosm of America across all of my district, how many don't believe that that it's all mumbo jumbo, that it's all fear mongering. I keep hearing that's your fear mongering. And I think the more that we're able to say, no, this is this is the true impact. These are the numbers that are going to happen. This is how it triages down. Case in point, yesterday, the farmer I was with said, our Methodist church feeds all these, these 500 families, but we're not getting our protein now because of cuts at USDA and SNAP. What are we going to do? How are we going to fill it? And I can't believe this is happening. I said, yes, it is. And I think, op-eds, but I guess your biggest way is in every forum. It really is writing op-eds, doing thought leadership, getting on LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is one of the best ways, and I'm going to really lean into it because it's not a really partisan place, but it's a place where you can reach a lot of different stakeholders, including private stakeholders. And so that is what I would ask you all to do, is to get the data, get the personal stories, connect the dots, and then say what needs to be done to fix it. And more, my biggest beef right now is that we actually need to give solutions. And what I'm really have been focused on is I can't control the larger narrative, but I can focus on the million people that I represent, and I can try and figure out the needs and work with you all and across to highlight those needs. And the more data I have and the more data you all have in connecting the dots to your different stakeholders is the more that we're going to move opinion, but also I think actually make a difference in getting some of these policies changed.
Thank you for those motivating words. I really appreciate it. And just thank you so much for taking some time during your very busy schedule during your recess to be with us today. Just know that all of us here on this call are, in the fight with you. We appreciate all of your efforts, and we're here to provide whatever supports and resources we can.
The last thing I will say is thank you all. I really appreciate what you do more than anything. I've had 160,000 people reach out to me. It's almost 3 to 4-fold over most congressional terms. And it is hard. And my staff is so amazing. They're meeting the moment. But, the one thing that gives me hope is, one, on a local level, that you all are doing this. We're not going to break. And two, 7 out of 8, I'm not going to speak to Andy Harris and the Freedom Caucus, but 7 out of 8 of our members in the Maryland delegation are lockstep. We are very coordinated. Senator Van Hollen has us meet, as a senior senator, has us meet every single month. We talk about ways that we can apply for things, ways that we can cross leverage. And we have Wes Moore, who really is, it's been dealt a very difficult hand, has a target on his back with this administration, with our research agencies, with our funding, and there's a personal animosity of the president who is very petty. And I don't want to. I'm in an official role saying this, but our governor also has our back. And he is going to do everything he can to make sure that we combat hunger and that we, are able to continue to provide health care for our most needy, and that we are going to have rule of law and due process in this state. And so that is such a gift for us in the state of Maryland. We are so blessed. And if we can figure out a way to do it better in Maryland, and I think we can, because we are all really forcefully rowing together. And I have to lift up, Lorianne is on our state senators and state delegates and our county commission. I mean, all of us, across are really trying as well. I think we're going to be able to weather this. and we'll get through it. It's going to be choppy, but we're really blessed to be in the state of Maryland and to have Governor Moore at the helm. So, with that, I say that there is hope, but, we just got to link arms. So thank you, Allison, for, bringing me on. And thank you all for what you do every day. I mean, it really, it's amazing. And thank you for joining. And know that you can always reach me at Rep. McClain Delaney at mail.house.gov, or you can reach out to our Frederick office. And we do return our calls and emails, and we're always there to help. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you to everyone joining today.
All righty. Take care. God bless. Bye-bye.